So initially, I will not talk. Let me just introduce it through the writing only, or maybe I'll just read out. Biology of Beauty, a Civilizational Reset. How beauty can restore wholeness to a fragmented civilization. That is the, you know. So we live in a world starved of beauty, not because it is scarce, but because we have been educated out of this innate capacity to perceive it. Modernity has served us from this, severed us from this fundamental truth. And beauty is not a cultural concept or an intellectual luxury. It's a biological imperative, a choiceless act of being that arises from our deepest evolutionary makeup. And that is the reason for formation of cultures that were once rooted in authenticity. Because today, the meaning of culture has become absolutely meaningless because what you have is the West in different forms. That's all. There is nothing other than, various versions of the West all around the world. So I want to take you through what I call as a non-intellectual exploration. And, just observe. Let me take you through just few images. So I'm showing some parts, clips. Sorry, what happened? Something. Ha ha ha. I'm showing this because that girl is not making an attempt to create anything beautiful, but things turn out to be beautiful. Because beauty is not actually a choice, it's not an ideated product, because the nature of life is such that what you produce becomes beautiful, your actions become beautiful, because that is the way life is. So, this is what modernity has completely misunderstood and turned it into something called art. The way they have, created something called education, learning, knowledge, a complete misunderstanding of what constitutes life. So, actually, my journey into beauty was when I, started studying design. I found that the whole design school we are being taught the Western aesthetic sense. That's all. So that is when I began to explore deeper into what is beauty. If everybody is being turned into have the same kind of aesthetic sense, what is the meaning of culture? That became a very important point in my life. So I began to work with, later began to work with children, illiterate people, and all that. So when I started working with illiterate people, traditional potters, where my role was no teaching at all, I found that they were able to produce something absolutely original and beautiful. And they don't know this is called art and sculpture and all that. This terms doesn't exist in their system at all. They just produce, you see. And so that is when I began to, explore more and more of this. That why is it that the whole educated actually produces? I mean, I'm talking about the regular educated. That how do we produce absolutely mediocre things? Though we celebrate it, that's a different reason. But how is it that we are cultivating mediocrity in a systematic manner where originality is what is given by life? How do we, lose it? So this is what I found, I just show you 2, 3 pictures. Then I started working with children in the same village. Same village, meaning here also the the schooling was not all that compulsory. Children don't go to school often. So I tried working with them. And again, I found that what they were producing were absolutely high standard. And they're not proud about it because they don't even know this is beautiful. You see? That they used to wonder, why is it I'm making all such hue and cry about what they do? They just didn't understand that. Because this has become very normal to them, no? And this is just using dry leaves. So this group was 6, 7 years to 13, 14-year-old children. And of course, I did not call it collage and all that. Just gave them new, colored magazines, and they started creating this, you know. So I started wondering, why is it that this what you produce is beautiful? Whereas in the whole, if you look at any of the schools, they will hardly ever produce anything near to this at all, because that is being, in a completely held in a very different manner. So what I did was that, so I actually, you see, I had no idea there is something called colonization, decolonization. I had no idea. I was not connected with anybody on this. It was purely a personal journey when I understood that I'm being completely colonized by modern education. That knowledge doesn't belong to us. If somebody is creating somewhere which is being given to us, reproduce it. I mean, mug it up. And the same thing started happening with beauty. But when I started living with illiterate people, I realized that I should actually start inquiring into the biology of beauty and not look at the politics of beauty. See, decolonization is a political attempt. I realized, no, one has to understand biology of beauty. That is when I began to. So once what happened was that a illiterate lady, potter girl, she, from a slab of clay, she was scooping out plates. And I have found that every time she scoop out beautiful circular type, products. Whereas I studied at NID, we were getting trained to draw circles and lines for almost 6 months. See? And this girl was doing it absolutely with no effort. So that is when I realized that there is an urge for order within us, which is life given. This is not for doing art, but for life, just for living. It's like this, when you look at this, your eye get slightly disturbed, no? Okay? It's like this, that when you enter a room, you find the mat, if it is slightly tilted, immediately you will go and make it straight, no? So there is something innate in us which wants order, certain kind of order. So while running a school, I came across this particular event in which, take a look at that girl, how she spontaneously organizes the the bricks that were, not organized properly. See how, and mind you, I have thousands of videos of this. Huh? So what I've been doing was I've been documenting children and rural tribal people to understand how this is so natural to people. See, and this is another very interesting activity where about 6, 7 children were building one small temple, and there was no leader. That is another thing that I found very interesting in the indigenous societies. Because in the modern society, we always consider there is a leader and a follower. But that is why you train leadership trainings. No, but that idea doesn't exist in a rural tribal community. Because I think everybody has this, autonomy. And so one of my friend was telling, this is called uh, coordinated cooperation. Whereas what we have in modernity is subordinated cooperation. You subordinate and make people cooperate. Whereas in indigenous societies, it's a coordinated cooperation. Or you can see that this is what the swarm intelligence of birds and things like that. No, how everyone works with one mind. And this is true of children also. This is true of indigenous societies where their ego has not been taken out, hardened. When you have hardened ego, it's very difficult to have a collective mind. So for children and indigenous societies, they function as a collective mind.
Jinan,
So,
just
yes, 10 minutes. Huh?
Signaling, yeah, that we can give it another 20 seconds, 30 seconds before we have to pass it forward.
Okay. So you can see that, I found that this was getting repeated everywhere. Every action was, there was beauty in it. I would say harmony in every action.